They want higher wages, more freedom on the job, better benefits. They want good health care. They want to retire with dignity, more freedom on the job, and less of those things for the boss.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Workers at GMG-owned outlets like Jezebel, Gizmodo, and The Root went on strike last week and won big time. Big time. From their press release, they have higher minimum salaries, including $62,000 at the lowest tier in 2022, up from $55,000. So people at the lowest immediately are getting a $7,000 raise. That's pretty cool, with an additional $1,000 each year for the life of the contract. A guaranteed 3% annual raise for all unit members, 15 weeks of parental leave, 12 weeks minimum severance, maintaining their current cost-sharing cap for health care, trans-inclusive health care. They defeated management's proposal to give up bargaining rights over changes to health care mid-contract. There is a $45,000 diversity effort budget with audit and transparency. There is a goal of 40% of candidates at the hiring manager interview stage from underrepresented backgrounds, which is very important. They retained the right to speak publicly about working conditions, including social media escalation campaigns. They strengthened editorial independence language. Management must now adhere to both GO Media's editorial policy and the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics, and they were able to obtain guarantees against forced relocation for current remote staff. Wow. That's a lot of good stuff. That is a lot of good stuff. And we've seen a lot of this in the media world, a lot of really good contracts coming out of the media world. And there's, when the strike was happening, there was some like, capital D discourse happening online about, these people are like privileged or whatever because, which doesn't even make sense. I mean, you're talking about people who are making like $55,000 a year in New York City. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, people have this idea of and of course, people like this exist, like, the millionaire New York Times op-ed writer. But by and large, like, people that write for media institutions are just like normal ass folks, right? They are just normal working people making the same thing, oftentimes less than you or me. And just because they have a lot of people listen to their opinions doesn't mean that they're rich. So be wary of that. Be wary of that instinct that we have to think that just because we see somebody on the TV or we see their name in a byline, that means they're rich, because it doesn't, unfortunately. I mean, not unfortunately. It's good that, people shouldn't be rich from just saying their opinions. But it is unfortunate that they don't make, even $62,000 in New York City, that's not a lot of money, right? That's not a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is, do they sell their labor for a salary or do they not? And, they don't own these platforms.
Which they should.
They, produce content in exchange for a salary. So they're workers. And, the whole arguments over, like, who's more, which workers are more privileged than others, I think can... that's not to say that there aren't differences. Of course, there are differences between folks who are, writing for Gawker Media versus, or Gizmodo, excuse me. Mm-hmm. The folks writing for Gizmodo and Jezebel, yeah, they're probably fairly privileged compared to the folks who are working at Walmart and Amazon. I get that. But there are gradations all throughout the working class. And at the end of the day, you start getting down into that. And it's very easy to divide the working class as opposed to focusing on what unites us. We're selling our labor in exchange for wages because we don't own the company. We don't own the whatever means of production that we're participating in.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of discourse, I saw something on Reddit about, like, where do you think, where should we say that the middle class begins? And it's like the middle class is a useless categorization.
Right.
Totally totally useless. It only exists to bifurcate workers, to make people think that working people's interests are divergent when we have different salaries, which by and large they are not. The interests of a worker making $30,000 at Amazon is the same as a worker making $70,000, on a job site working for a trade union, right? And the interests are they want higher wages, they want more freedom on the job, they want better benefits, they want better protections, they want good health care, they want to retire with dignity, and they want less alienation, more freedom on the job, and less of those things for the boss, right?
And
less control for the boss, more control for you, more independence. All of these things every worker wants, every worker deserves, and so all other distinctions are by and large not useful.
Yeah, I mean, class is not the same as income. That's why we support the Major League Baseball players, even though some of them are legitimately millionaires.
Right.
Even the minimum salaries are going to be six figures. I'd love to make what they make, but I support them nonetheless because it's a conflict between employer and employee, between owners and workers.
And unlike when we're talking about in the private sector, where we're talking about a boss making, every dollar that you make is a dollar that the boss doesn't keep, and vice versa. Unlike that dynamic, it's not that way with the MLB players, right? Like, I'm not affected whether or not they make $500,000 in a year or $700,000 in a year, or $800,000 or $1 million in a year, right? I'm not affected by that, and so of course they're the ones that are making. They're the ones that are responsible for MLB's success, not the owners. The owners, by and large, hurt the industry, and so of course the people that do the work should get more of the value that they create. And then we can talk about redistribution after that.
I mean,
but
you're exactly right, though. Middle class is one of those buzzwords, these phrases that has been used for a very long time now at this point in the United States to really obscure the class struggle in this country and obscure the class power relations in this country. I think they have tried to convince about 80-90% of the country to all think they're middle class, and somebody's got to be wrong there.
Yeah.
Class ultimately depends on your relationship to the economy, your relationship to the means of production, and how you make a living. If you make your living off wages, you ain't in the same class as the folks who make their living off profits and rents and interest and dividends. That's a whole, there are competing interests here, trademarks. What else can I say?
Yeah. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.